Will the House come to order? Mr. Clerk?
Aloha and good morning. Today's invocation will be delivered by Representative Diamond Garcia. Will the members who wish to participate please rise?
On March 22nd, 1895, here at the palace, our beloved queen wrote this prayer. Mai nana ino ino na hewa o kanaka, a ka e huikala a maʻemaʻe no. I live in sorrow, imprisoned, you are my light, your glory my support. Behold not with malevolence the sins of man, but forgive them and cleanse them. And so, O Lord, protect us beneath your wings, and let peace be our portion now and forevermore. Amen.
Thank you, Representative Garcia. Item 1. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Ayu, Mr. Alcos, Ms. Amato, Ms. Bellotti, Mr. Chun, Ms. Cochran, Mr. Evslin, Mr. Ganadin, Mr. Garcia, Mr. Garrett, Mr. Gates, Mr. Hashem, Mr. Hashimoto, Mr. Holt, Ms. Hussey Burdick, Ms. Ichiyama, Ms. Kahaloa, Ms. Capella, Mr. Kila, Ms. Kitagawa, Mr. Kobayashi, Mr. Kong, Ms. Lachika, Ms. Lamosao, Ms. Lowen, Ms. Martin, Ms. Martinez,
Excuse.
Mr. Matayoshi, Ms. Matsumoto, Mr. Mizuno, Ms. Morikawa, Ms. Nakamura, Mr. Nakashima, Mr. Nishimoto, Mr. Onishi, Ms. Peruso, Mr. Pirik, Ms. Poepoe, Mr. Quinlan, Mr. Saiki, Mr. Sayama, Ms. Souza, Mr. Takayama, Ms. Takenouchi, Mr. Tam, Mr. Tarnas, Mr. Todd,
Excused.
Mr. Ward, Mr. Woodson, Mr. Yamashita, Mr. Speaker.
Present.
Mr. Speaker, 49 members are present, 2 are excused.
Item 2. Reading of the journal. Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, may this matter be deferred.
So ordered. Item 3. Mr. Clerk, are there any messages from the governor?
Mr. Speaker, there are none.
Item 4. Mr. Clerk, are there any Senate communications?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, we're in receipt of communications returning the noted House bills, all having passed third reading in the Senate.
Representative Nakamura.
Mr. Speaker, I move to disagree to the amendments made by the Senate to the noted House bills.
Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
Any discussions? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion is carried. Members, are there any introductions? Representative Hashimoto.
Thank you, Speaker. It's my honor to introduce my former boss and former council chair of the Maui County Council, Mike White, Vice Chair of HTA.
Members, with no further introductions, let's move on to our agenda. Item 5A, unfinished business. Members, we are on part 1 on the consent calendar. Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules of the House in order to consider certain Senate bills for third reading by consent calendar.
Representative Garcia.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
Any questions? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion is carried. Representative Nakamura.
Mr. Speaker, I move to adopt the standing committee reports listed on pages 2 through 10, and that the Senate bills listed on pages 2 through 10 as may be amended past third reading.
Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
Members, there will be no discussion on these, as these are items agreed to by this body for placement on the consent calendar. Representative Morikawa for the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the measures before us, all majority members vote aye, with the exception of the following. On page 6, STANCOM Report Number 2111, SB Number 1129, SD2HD2. The following vote no. Peruso and Tam. Thank you.
Representative Garcia.
On the measures before us, all minority members vote aye.
Have all votes been cast? Said Senate bills pass third reading. Members, please remember to submit to the clerk the list of Senate bills on the consent calendar for which you will be inserting written comments in support or in opposition. This must be done by adjournment of today's floor session. Members, we will have a short recess prior to convening the ordinary calendar. Recess subject to the call of the chair. Will the House come to order? Members, we are on the top of page 11, Part 2, Ordinary Calendar, Unfinished Business. Representative Nakamura.
Mr. Speaker, I move to adopt the standing committee reports listed on pages 11 through 20, and that the accompanying Senate bills as listed may be amended past third reading.
Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
Any discussion on SB 47? Representative Tarnas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a floor amendment to offer.
Mr. Clerk, have copies of the floor amendment been distributed to the members?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, copies of floor amendment number 6 have been distributed.
Representative Tarnas.
Mr. Speaker, I move to adopt the floor amendment.
Representative Takayama.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
Any discussion on the proposed floor amendment?
Mr. Speaker.
Representative Tarnas.
Thank you. This is just to allow us to take this measure to conference in order to address some unforeseen concerns and objections raised by members regarding this, especially related to the ability of the Office of Elections to carry this out, and also that the potential confusion to voters when the sample ballot is different from the ballot that they see in the voting booth or when they receive their ballot in the mail. So I'd like the opportunity to address this in conference, so I'm asking for this floor amendment, which only changes the effective date to be defective to allow this to go to conference. Thank you. And I'm standing in support.
All right, members, we are going to take a voice vote. Vote aye if you are in favor of the floor amendment. Vote no if you are opposed to the floor amendment. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The floor amendment has been adopted. Please note that the 48-hour notice for this measure. Members, we are back to the main motion, but we're going to go to STANCOM Report 2079, STANCOM 2079. 2080. Representative Pierick.
No, please.
So ordered.
So this measure would focus tax dollars on art. I think art is a good thing. Our culture should be preserved, but when we talk about tax dollars, I think our tax dollar money should be going towards other things other than art. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Tam.
Mr. Speaker, in support.
Proceed.
The Festival of Pacific Arts happens every 4 years, and this upcoming year, Hawaii has been chosen to host this prestigious event, and it would bring some much-needed economic boost to Hawaii's economy when it comes to our small businesses who are still recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic. So I urge all members to vote in support of this measure.
Representative Kahaloa.
In strong support, and I'd like to adopt the words of the representative from Waikiki.
So ordered. Representative Souza.
In strong support, same request. Thank you.
So ordered. Representative Kila.
Same request, Speaker, and then brief comment in support.
Proceed.
The Festival of the Pacific Arts has been delayed due to COVID, and Hawaii has not hosted the Pacific Arts Festival. This festival is the culmination of the Polynesian cultures throughout the Pai'aina that exists here in the Pacific Oceania, and I think what a beautiful chance for Hawaii to display the native Hawaiian culture to our Polynesian brothers and sisters. So I stand in strong support, and I hope our colleagues can support this measure. Mahalo.
Members, let's move on to the next STANCOM Report 2083. Representative Hussey Burdick.
Reservations, please.
So ordered. Next page. 2086, 2087. Representative LaChica.
Mahalo, Speaker. In strong support.
Proceed.
Mahalo to the chairs, the health chair, CPC, and finance for passing out this measure. Just wanted to share that this is a measure that would regulate e-cigarettes as they remain to be the only tobacco product unregulated in the state. This measure would subject e-cigarettes to the current regulations that apply to cigarettes and other tobacco products. This includes taxation, the restriction of online sales, and requiring permitting and licensing. 5 years ago, the U.S. Surgeon General declared e-cigarette use among youth as an epidemic. In 2022, national e-cigarette use among high school students was 14.1%. Here in Hawaii, it is 31%. For U.S. middle schoolers, it was 3.3%, while in Hawaii, it is 18%. So we know the statistics, we've heard from our youth, we've seen the stories. Now is the time for us, this is our only remaining bill to regulate e-cigarettes, and I hope my colleagues join me in supporting this measure. Mahalo.
Members, we'll go to 2092, 2093, 2094, next page, 2095, 2096. Representative Martin.
Thank you, Speaker. I rise in strong support. I just wanted to note that this is something that was included in a bill that was vetoed by the governor last year, and it would help the Child Welfare Service, which has a dramatic increase in funding should the budget go through as it is this year, spend that money more wisely. This would be a working group with all the various stakeholders that play one part or another in serving this community and in interacting as part of the community, whether they be resource caregivers or birth families or nonprofits. And I just think that this is a great investment in helping us reform child welfare services and use their expanded budget well. Thank you.
2102, Representative Souza.
Mr. Speaker, with reservations,
Proceed.
I strongly support the intent of this bill. However, I do have some concerns as to its implementation. In its execution, it may be difficult to have such a stringent policy in place across the board for all of our law enforcement agencies. In Judiciary and its most recent testimony to the Finance Committee, HPD stated that it currently has policies and procedures in place that either meet or exceed those proposed in the bill, including reasonableness in its use of force, a duty to intervene with regard to unlawful use of force, and use of force training and reporting. The requirement in this bill that a law enforcement officer intercede when present and observing another law enforcement officer using force that is clearly beyond that which is necessary, as determined by an objectively reasonable law enforcement officer under the circumstances, taking into account the possibility that other law enforcement officers may have additional information regarding the threat posed by a subject, could present a gray area. Many instances of perceptions of excessive force could go either way, and hence it has oftentimes been left to the courts to determine if excessive force were used in each circumstance that rose to a litigious level. I caution that a mistake of fact scenario could lead to unintended outcomes due to the duty to intercede, as the objectively reasonable officer may not have all the facts necessary to make a proper split-second decision as to whether to intervene, and in some instances could create more chaos by intervening where it is not necessary or could even present more danger. I will also note that SHOPO is in strong opposition to this bill, stating in their testimony that this bill continues to add unnecessary scrutiny and burden on our police officers when multi-layers of safeguards are already in place that hold each and every county police officer accountable for their individual actions and omissions, both administratively and criminally. For these reasons, I am hesitant to give my full support to this measure as written due to the logistical burdens. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Matsumoto.
With reservations.
So ordered. 2104, next page. 2106, Representative Souza.
At the appropriate time, can we go back to 2104?
Let's finish 2106. Moving back to 2104, Representative Souza.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In strong support, there have been several good fireworks bills introduced this session, but those bills were piecemeal approaches to combating illegal fireworks and would likely remain fruitless in its execution if we do not have a strategic plan in place to combat the fireworks issue comprehensively, engaging all stakeholders and enforcement agencies. One of the top complaints I receive from my constituents in Kapolei and Makakilo pertains to illegal fireworks. They are tired of fireworks laws that are on the books but do little to deter people from obtaining illegal fireworks and creating havoc in our communities with their loud booms at all hours of the day. Illegal fireworks continue to be a nuisance for our community members, and I strongly support this attempt to establish an illegal fireworks task force for the peace and enjoyment of our communities. Thank you.
Let's move on to the next page. 2117. Representative Hussey Burdick.
Reservations, please.
So ordered. 2118. 2119. Representative Souza.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In strong support, I think this is a good dam bill that fortunately rises to the level of a damn good bill. And I'll be damned if I didn't stand up and speak on this particular measure. Thank you to the Senator from Maui for introducing this measure and highlighting the importance of dam safety legislation. For those of us on this floor who, as a 1L at Richardson, took first semester civil procedure with Professor Yamamoto, we read the Buffalo Creek disaster, the harrowing true story of the coal slurry impoundment dam in Logan County, West Virginia, bursting and unleashing 132 million gallons of black wastewater, ravaging through 16 coal towns, killing 125 men, women, and children, injuring over 1,000 people and leaving 4,000 people homeless. The Buffalo Mining Company operated the dam under the parent company, Pittston Coal. For our class purpose, the Buffalo Creek disaster was a lesson in piercing the corporate veil and allowed Pittston Coal to be sued as stockholders as the parent company. My takeaway was that dams are dangerous. Without proper maintenance, it can wreak havoc, which in that instance, Pittston Coal tried to argue that the bursting was an act of God, but in reality, the situation was simply preventable. In 2006, a dam privately owned by a local businessman broke on Kauai, killing 7 people. The Kaloko Dam disaster unleashed an estimated 400 million gallons on the community nearby. Dams are dangerous if not upkept. Therefore, I wholeheartedly support this grant program and this bill. Thank you.
Next page. 2120. 2121. Representative Perry.
No, please.
So ordered. Proceed.
So this measure would expand the government by creating a more government, and so I'm not in support of that. I believe that we should decrease the government, decrease the state budget, and decrease taxes.
2122. 2123. Representative Amato.
With reservations.
So ordered. Next page. 2124. Representative Amato.
With reservations.
So ordered.
Thank you.
2126. Representative Souza.
Mr. Speaker, request for ruling on a potential conflict.
Say your conflict.
My brother is an OHA trustee, and this bill would provide a percentage of geothermal royalties to the Office of Hawaiian Affairs.
No conflict. Ruling stands till sin die unless your circumstances changes.
Thank you.
Representative Poi Poi.
Reservations.
So ordered. 2127. Representative Souza.
Thank you again, Mr. Speaker. In strong support, this is important legislation that will help halt PFAS, harmful forever chemicals. I would like to point out that there is still so much to learn about PFAS, and the Environmental Protection Agency has a strategic roadmap in place to protect the environment and people from PFAS that was implemented in October 2021. EPA's 3 main goals related to PFAS are research, restrict, and remediate. Research to increase understanding, restrict to proactively prevent PFAS from entering air, land, and water at levels that can adversely impact human health and the environment, and remediate, broadening and accelerating the cleanup of PFAS contamination to protect human health and ecological systems. This bill will help with preventative measures and restrict PFAS from continuing its harmful effects in line with the current work of the EPA. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Matsumoto.
With reservations.
So ordered. 2128. Next page. 2129. 2130. 2131. Representative Hussey Burdick.
Reservations, please.
So ordered. 213. Representative Tam.
On
2131.
2131.
2131.
Yeah. Yes. In support, just permission to insert written comments.
So ordered. 2132. Next page. 2134. 2136. 2137. Representative Souza.
Thank you again, Mr. Speaker. In strong support, thank you to the Senator from Molokai for introducing this important legislation for residents there. My roots are in Molokai, and I have ohana that still lives there. We have to make commuting to and from Molokai more accessible for its residents, and lowering passenger tickets and encouraging airlines to enter the market at Molokai Airport will help with that. Thank you.
Representative Perry.
No, please.
So ordered.
So this measure would help an airline company get to and fro from Molokai. I think that's a good thing that we have airfare for our residents. At the same time, if a business is struggling, I don't believe it's the taxpayer's role to bail out that company. Whether it's a car company, a small business, or an airline, I don't think the tax dollars should be funding the economy by bailing out a business. I think the business should improve their operation to stay afloat or to stay in flight. So I'll be voting no.
Representative Souza.
Mr. Speaker, again, rising in strong support.
Proceed.
I'd like to note that the representative from Ho'opili is misstating the purpose and intent of the bill. Thank you.
2140. Next page. 2142. 2143.
Mr. Speaker,
Representative Garrett.
I rise in opposition.
Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As many of you know, before joining this body, I had the privilege of serving as the Deputy Director of the Department of Human Resources Development in the prior administration. One of my proudest accomplishments during my tenure at DHERD was successfully transitioning thousands of state employees to telework during the early phases of the pandemic. Through the governor's stay-at-home orders, telework allowed us to keep government operating while keeping our employees safe during the course of the public health emergency. Although I oppose this bill, for reasons I'll get into shortly, I want to make it very clear that I'm a strong proponent of telework. Among other things, it helps employees achieve work-life balance and protects our planet by keeping cars off the road. I'm convinced that telework is here to stay. It's a very powerful recruitment and retention tool, and something that public employers, like the state of Hawaii, must offer to stay competitive with the private sector. Mr. Speaker, from my experience, telework is predicated on two things: communication and trust. Managers have to be clear in communicating their expectations and have to trust that their employees are responsible enough to complete their task without constant supervision. Conversely, employees have to understand that working from home or a remote site is a privilege, not a right, and that those who violate that should expect to have that privilege revoked. My objections pertain primarily to the poorly defined telework monitoring system that's included in this bill. In your Committee on Finance, it was shared with us that such a system can cost in upwards of $1 million per department, yet it's not exactly clear what it would accomplish for such an exorbitant amount. Mr. Speaker, I opined in your Committee on Finance that this bill is a solution in search of a problem, and my feelings have not changed. If there are productivity issues with employees who are teleworking, rather than implementing a costly system that would potentially violate the privacy of state employees, the easy, no-cost solution, as in free, is to simply bring them back to the office. There's also the important issue of respecting the collective bargaining process. As a DHERD deputy, I sat through numerous negotiation sessions, and in my opinion, modifying work conditions by utilizing this type of system must be negotiated by the employer and the exclusive representative of each of the various bargaining units. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, it's no secret that the executive branch continues to have challenges filling thousands of vacant positions. Despite the challenges that COVID presented, I personally regret that we weren't able to make more progress on this front while I was there. But as we emerge out of the pandemic, I believe DHERD must remain singularly focused on recruiting qualified candidates to fill those vacancies, tasking them with procuring and implementing a telework monitoring system outlined in this bill, is an unnecessary distraction from their core mission. So for these reasons, Mr. Speaker, I oppose this bill and encourage my colleagues to do the same. Thank you.
Representative Hasibardig.
Reservations, please.
So ordered. Representative Amato.
In opposition, and I request that the words of the Honorable Representative from Manoa be entered in the journal as if they were my own.
So ordered.
Thank you.
Representative Kennedy.
Same request.
So ordered. Representative Martin.
Same request.
Mr. Speaker.
So ordered. Representative Ayu.
Same request.
So ordered. Representative Matsuyoshi.
In support.
Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I agree with the previous speaker that telework is an important aspect that we need to start looking into. This bill, when it came over to us from the Senate, did have a lot of issues, I thought, but the House's position, I think, is much smaller. And it's, what it's meant to do is convince the more traditional managers in the state government, and some of the people here in this building too, that telework is an effective policy that does not lead to a decrease in productivity. While I can appreciate the state's current telework policy, and I think it's a good one, it does leave a lot of options open and discretion open to various departments and various managers. In order to convince the managers and certain department heads that teleworking is an effective policy, because I do agree that it can be a powerful recruitment tool for state government, I think we need more data, and that's what this bill aims to do. One of the things that this bill aims to do is to require a report to the state legislature of various aspects, and some of those are aspects such as how many positions a department feels they can telework, that can telework effectively, and how many of those positions are teleworking effectively. It's holding certain departments accountable for actually implementing this teleworking policy. Another thing that the House put in is training generally for all managers throughout the state to allow them to more effectively manage teleworking employees. Now, teleworking has been around for a while. That's why it's called telework, not internet work. But I think the older school managers are not used to managing employees that don't have their butts in their seats, where they can't walk by their desk at any time to kind of look over their shoulder. And while I think my generation and the younger generations agree that that's not necessary, I think certain older managers have a mindset that butts in seats is how you manage. We want to move away from that. And I think the only way we can convince them to move away from this is to give them data. And that's what this bill manages to do, and to manage and train these managers to effectively manage the productivity of teleworking employees. This bill originally was meant to implement this telework monitoring program on all departments. We've pared it down to a kind of a pilot program of 3 departments that are willing and kind of eager to implement a telework policy. And I think that by showing the teleworking policy can work effectively on a wider scale from these 3 departments and getting the data to back this up, we can convince other departments to follow suit, other managers to follow suit, and spread the teleworking policy implementation throughout the state. And again, I do agree that it would be a great recruitment tool to fill all these vacancies. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Kahaloa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In opposition,
Proceed.
may I adopt the words from the representative from Manoa?
So ordered.
Thank you.
Representative Lamasao.
Same request, Speaker.
So ordered. Representative Kila.
Same request, Mr. Speaker.
So ordered. Representative Souza.
With reservations, thank you.
So ordered. Representative Chan.
In opposition, and I'd like to adopt the words of the representative from Manoa as if they were my own.
So ordered.
Thank you.
Two 144. Representative Souza.
Mr. Speaker, in support, I am not sure if this is the best way to go about pivoting from a focus on strictly marketing Hawaii and a strong emphasis on tourism to managing tourism in a different way. But this is what we have on the table before us, and we should see if this route will produce better results and a greater tolerance for tourism from our residents' perspective. I do take issue with the tourism liaison officer position that this bill will establish within the office of the governor. For consistency purposes, the name of this position should be Destination Management Liaison Officer, because if the agency has a stale name, as the representative from Hawaii Kai has already pointed to on previous occasion, so too shall this newly formed position. Some of the functions of this position should be best left to the executive director of Destination Management, and some functions could probably be designated to current policy folks already on the 5th floor. Thank you.
Representative Ward.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong opposition.
Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to quote our good friend Paul Brubaker from UHERO. UHERO is the UH research office that does a lot of the economic development, and many of those members are part of our Council on Revenues, the guys who know what's happening in the area. The point is, Brubaker argues that, as I will, that this bill will not improve tourism in Hawaii. HTA has accomplished its initial task of marketing our state with flying colors, yet, as I've spoken many times on the floor, it has been now us to punish them for succeeding. That's taking merit and turning it on its head, Mr. Speaker. As conditions and sentiments change, so has their focus. The HTA has begun an aggressive pivot to existing island-specific destination management. Repeat, destination management, not marketing and getting more visitors beyond the $10 million mark. So has the HTA in need of change? Of course it does. As Mr. Brubaker says, the governance model is one of those, and its cross-cutting impact is another one. But should we be playing with the biggest economic variable that keeps Hawaii alive, Mr. Speaker? It's military spending and tourism, yet we're playing around with it. We're mucking around with something that is very vital to the very existence of each of our districts. As HTA President John DeFries said last week, this measure is like throwing out the baby and keeping the bathwater. That's direct from the Finance Committee testimony. Mr. Speaker, the bottom line is, in the initial UHERO position, is that we've got to get our history straight. According to Mr. Brubaker, HTA was established as a destination management organization, not just a destination marketing organization. So management is already part of its history, of its origins, of its purpose. And another key point I want to mention from Mr. Brubaker is that under DeFries, the new director, HTA produced a destination management action plan for each island to, quote, rebuild, redefine, and reset tourism's direction. Basically, the essence of what this bill is by throwing the baby out and keeping the bath. And that's over a 3-year period, which has already begun. HTA calls it a regenerative model of tourism. Regenerative meaning to bring life back to it in a controllable way. Mr. Brubaker continues by saying SB 1522, Mr. Speaker, the bill before us on this floor, it proposes to, quote, dissolve, end quote, the Hawaii Tourism Authority and create a new tourism agency because some state lawmakers claim that the HTA has, quote, failed to effectively execute its duties to manage the tourism and marketing plan for the state. The bill cites evidence of, quote, mismanagement, end quote, by the HTA in the failed award of the $34 million U.S. marketing contract. It demonstrates HTA's noncompliance with the Hawaii Public Procurement Code, which to my way of thinking is a mistake by the way that DBED flubbed the marketing, not HTA. That was a DBED fault. Continuing with Mr. Brubaker, he said, if passed, this bill, SB 1522, SD2, would establish an Office of Tourism and Destination Management within DBED for administrative purposes. It would be governed by a 9-member unpaid board of directors appointed by the governor. Mr. Speaker, what does government do well? It often does very poorly in business, and it politicizes because it puts it under the governor to appoint the people, and under DBED to run it, of which has done a very, very difficult job of where we are now because of the way that one particular gentleman who has retired couldn't get the contract straight between 2 competing entities. The point is, when politicians get involved in economics, economics go south. Not only does Mr. Brubaker chime in on this, so does the Honolulu Advertiser that he cites. He says the Honolulu Advertiser editors opine that creating a new agency while tourism is moving in a new direction is not a good idea. A better idea is to fix the HTA. Mr. Speaker, I think that's what we need to do, put our heads together and fix it instead of, again, using Mr. DeFries.
Representative Perry?
I yield my time.
So ordered. Representative Gord, go ahead.
May I continue?
Yes.
Thank you. So the editors of the Honolulu Advertiser said it's a better idea to fix the Hawaii Tourism Authority. Fix it means put your heads together, find out what's going right, what's going wrong, rather than, again, keeping the water and throwing the baby out. The bottom line, I think, Mr. Speaker, is summarized somewhat by this quote from Mr. Brubaker. Instead of rushing into a decision that holds little promise of success, what is needed is a cool-headed look at how Hawaii can craft a new tourism governance system that will actually work. Hawaii is not alone in trying to fix its destination governance systems. Other destinations are doing the same, and some, especially in Europe, have a head start on us. We can benefit from studying other destinations such as Europe and how they're doing. This bill, there was a bill, HB 1381, at the legislature that proposed to do just that, but it didn't get a hearing and thus died before the session. Repealing HTA without an improved replacement is unwise. I repeat, Mr. Speaker, repealing HTA without an improved replacement is unwise. Unwise does not impute motive, but it does say it's a bad policy, which is in this bill. Mr. Speaker, let's keep HTA alive and keep the baby alive with it. Thank you.
Representative Quinlan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support.
Proceed.
10 million visitors a year, Mr. Speaker. Depending on where you stand on this issue, that's either a fantastic number or a terrifying one. And we got there in a very short span of time. And it's not just the sheer raw number of visitors, Mr. Speaker. It's that the visitor has changed. The type of vacations that people like to go on has changed. Thanks to social media, and Instagram, and its ilk, there are no hidden local places anymore. There is no such thing as privileged local knowledge. There are so many places in all of our communities that were previously reserved only for us and are now inundated day after day by tourists who want to have an authentic vacation. And that's really what it comes down to, right, is having an authentic vacation. But Mr. Speaker, we are not Disney World, even if we cost more than Disney World. And we have to make sure that we set expectations for our visitors. Mr. Speaker, destination management is not just a bunch of words thrown together. Destination management is an investment in our local communities. Destination management is the idea that when push comes to shove, we should put the taxpayer first and put people over profits. Mr. Speaker, while I appreciate the comments of my colleague from Hawaii Kai, I'd just like to close with this. The fault, dear Brutus, lies not in our stars, but in ourselves. Thank you.
Representative Kahaloa.
With reservations.
So ordered.
Thank you.
Speaker.
Representative Ward, second time.
Speaker, I left out a couple of very important points. One was when times were in trouble in 2008, when the economy dipped, we cheered HTA. Come on, guys, get more people here. Let them spend more money. We don't want you beer budget guys. We want champagne spenders. And it worked. The point is, those are the guys who put their foot on the accelerator. They're the ones who will know how to take it off, Mr. Speaker. That's one point that I failed to mention. The second thing is the unkindest, using the Shakespearean notion, the unkindest cut of all is that the budget is cut 50%. So if we want to do a good job, whether we're reversing it with this bill or with the old way of doing it, the HTA as it is now, why are we cutting the budget to do something of which we got to turn a huge ship around and expect it's going to be on a budget, on a diet budget? Mr. Speaker, it doesn't make sense. So this bill, I think it's good. We can tell our constituents, hey, we're going to kick cars out of your place. There's going to be less Airbnb. We're getting a nice virtue signaling to those people who vote for us. But in terms of substantive, economic, intellectual development, I think we're taking a step backwards, Mr. Speaker. So we get a virtue signal out of this, but in terms of substantive development, this bill will be regretted. Thank you.
And those points are in opposition.
Mr. Speaker.
Representative Garrett.
Reservations, please.
So ordered. Representative Kila.
Mr. Speaker, reservations, and may I adopt the words of the tourism chair as if they were my own.
So ordered.
Thank you.
2146. Next page. 2147. 2150. 2153. 2154. Representative Morikawa.
Thank you, Mr.
I'm sorry. Representative Pierick
In opposition.
on 2154.
So this measure would curtail our Second Amendment rights. I have had constituents reach out to me mentioning how they do want gun control. And so that's an admirable motion, and I'm glad that they're reaching out to us. At the same time, we've taken an oath of office to defend the Constitution. So if the Second Amendment says we shall not infringe this, we can't vote yes on this measure. At least I believe I can't vote yes on this measure in good conscience, knowing that I took an oath to defend the Constitution on January 18th. Thank you.
Representative Tarnas?
In support.
Proceed.
Thank you. This measure was carefully crafted in order to make sure that we do comply with the U.S. Supreme Court decision, the Bruin case, where we are allowed to set up a reasonable system of regulation for concealed carry weapons. And we crafted this with that in mind so that members here would be able to vote in support of this and also recognize that we are being consistent with the Second Amendment. Thank you very much.
Representative Capella?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In strong support, I'd just like the words of the representative from Waimea inserted into the journal as if they were my own.
So ordered. Representative Tam?
Same request.
So ordered. Representative Bellotti?
Thank you. In strong support of permission to insert written comments.
So ordered. Representative Amato?
Same request, please.
So ordered. Representative Morikawa for the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the measures before us, all majority members vote aye with the exception of the following. On page 11, STANCOM report number 2083, SB number 1518, SD2HD3. The following vote no. Capella and Peruso. On page 16, STANCOM report number 2126, SB number 458, SD2HD3. The following vote no. Ganaden, Kahaloa, Capella, Kila. STANCOM report number 2127, SB number 504, SD1HD3. The following vote no. Ayu, Kila, Kong, Lamusao. On page 17, STANCOM report number 2131, SB number 865, SD2HD1. The following vote no. Cochran, Capella, Peruso. On page 19, STANCOM report number 2142, SB number 764, SD1HD3. Rep. Capella votes no. STANCOM report number 2143, SB number 725, SD2HD2. The following vote no. Ayu, Amato, Chun, Evslen, Garrett, Gates, Holt, Kahaloa, Capella, Kila, La Chica, Lamusao, Martinez, Poi Poi, Takenouchi. On page 20, STANCOM report number 2147, SB number 682, SD1HD2. Rep. Kong votes no. STANCOM report number 2154, SB number 1230, SD2HD1. The following vote no. Gates, Kila, and Kong. Thank you.
Representative Garcia?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the measures before us, all minority members vote aye with the exception of the following. On page 11, SCR 1625, SB 47, HD1, Rep. Garcia votes no. SCR 2080, SB 449, SD2, HD2, Rep. Pierick votes no. On page 12, SCR 2092, SB 1370, SD1, HD1, Rep. Pierick votes no. SCR 2093, SB 1492, SD2, HD2, Rep. Garcia votes no. Page 13, SCR 2095, SB 239, SD2 HD3, Rep. Herrick votes no. SCR 2102, SB 151, SD2 HD2, Reps. Alcos, Garcia, and Ward vote no. On page 14, SCR 2118, SB 44, SD2 HD3, Garcia votes no. Page 15, SCR 2121, SB 1296, SD2 HD2, Rep. Herrick votes no. SCR 2122, SB 419, SD1 HD1, Rep. Garcia and Herrick vote no. Page 16, SCR 2126, SB 458, SD2 HD3, Reps. Alcos, Garcia, Matsumoto, Herrick, and Ward vote no. SCR 2127, SB 504, SD1 HD3, Reps. Garcia and Herrick vote no. SCR 2128, SB 393, SD1 HD3, Rep. Herrick votes no. Page 17, SCR 2130, SB 729, SD1 HD2, Reps. Garcia and Herrick vote no. SCR 2132, SB 898, SD2 HD1, Rep. Herrick votes no. Page 18, SCR 2134, SB 1596, SD1 HD1, Rep. Herrick votes no. SCR 2137, SB 784, SD1 HD2, Rep. Herrick votes no. Page 19, SCR 2143, SB 725, SD2 HD2, Reps. Alcos and Garcia vote no. SCR 2144, SB 1522, SD2 HD2, Reps. Alcos, Garcia, Matsumoto, Herrick, and Ward vote no. SCR 2146, SB 627 HD2, Rep. Garcia votes no. Page 20, SCR 2147, SB 682, SD1 HD2, Reps. Alcos, Garcia, Herrick, and Ward vote no. SCR 2150, SB 1543, SD2 HD2, Rep. Garcia and Herrick vote no. SCR 2153, SB 1005, SD2 HD1, Garcia votes no. SCR 2154, SB 1230, SD2 HD1, the Minority Caucus votes no.
Have all votes been cast for Representative Peruso?
Mr. Speaker, I apologize. I want to correct my vote on STANCOM report number 2142, SB 764. On page 19, I'm voting no. Thank you.
So ordered. Representative Kong?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On STANCOM report 2147, SB number 682, SD1 HD2 on page 20, I would like to record a no vote.
So ordered.
Okay, thank you, Speaker.
With the exception of SB 47, said Senate bills passed third reading. Item 7, members, are there any announcements? Representative Capella?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of the Higher Education and Technology Committee, I'd like to request a waiver of the 48-hour notice requirement for the purpose of a public hearing with decision-making to follow on the following measures: SCR 27 SD1, SCR 74, SCR 79 SD1, SCR 37 SD1, SCR 179, SCR 185 SD1.
So ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The hearing will be held on Wednesday, April 12th at 2 o'clock p.m. in conference room 309.
Representative Souza?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to extend best wishes and congratulations to all of the halau, kumuhula, hula dancers, and behind-the-scenes helpers in Alaka'i who have embarked or are currently embarking on their journey to Hilo, Hawaii for the 60th annual Merry Monarch Festival this week. A special aloha to Auntie Luana Kavelu for continuing to perpetuate this important legacy, and to our dear friend Melea Pana, who is co-hosting the competition for the first time. A warm congratulations and aloha to all.
No further announcements. Representative Morikawa.
Mr. Speaker, I move that this House stand adjourned until 12 o'clock noon Thursday.
Representative Garcia.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion is carried. The House stands adjourned until 12 noon Thursday.